And here we go. A Georgia Court of Appeals has disqualified the Fulton County DA, Fani Willis, from that election interference case. It's coming down right now. The case against Trump and more than a dozen others already largely stalled, as you know. The new ruling means that it will be up to the prosecuting attorney's council in the state of Georgia to find another prosecutor to decide on the case.
Well, it looks like DA Fani Willis is out of the Trump case in Georgia. Let's hear the details.
Georgia. And here we go. A Georgia Court of Appeals has disqualified the Fulton County DA, Fani Willis, from that election interference case. It's coming down right now. The case against Trump and more than a dozen others already largely stalled, as you know. The new ruling means that it will be up to the prosecuting attorney's council in the state of Georgia to find another prosecutor to decide on the case, to take it over and make a decision as to whether or not they continue with a prosecution.
What do y'all think? Do you think they're going to continue with the case, or you think this is a done deal, another victory for Trump? What are your thoughts? Comment down below.
Of the incoming president.
And former Deputy Assistant Attorney General John Yoo is here. John, does this mean that this is yet another one of the cases against Trump that could go away before he's president?
It's another example, Dana, of this lawfare campaign that was waged by Democrats, boomeranging back on them and falling all around their ears. Anyone who watched this trial, remember, this is the DA who claimed that the entire Trump reelection campaign was something like an organized crime racket that was intending to deprive everyone of our civil rights to vote. But
which was completely nuts. I mean, just think about it. 2000, 2004, 2016, the Democrats had no problem contesting the elections. Each of those years I just mentioned, they contested the election, and they believed that the election was stolen. But then in 2020, when Trump, in the craziest year, one of the craziest years we've had in recent memory, recent U.S. history, with the COVID vaccine, the George Floyd incident, the riots that swept our nation, mail-in ballots to a degree we've never had before, and Trump believed that there were issues with the election, with the vote, and he protests and tries to see what his legal route he could take to contest the election. Now they were trying to turn around and say that this was some kind of RICO criminal organization in order to overturn the election. Insane. And most people just believe that narrative at face value. So I'm glad this case, well, at least she's been DQ'd. Now, what happens in the long term, only time will tell.
Remember, we saw the dramatic testimony over the summer of how DA Fani Willis had hired her boyfriend, essentially, to be the special counsel, overpaid him, and then had him investigate and bring charges against Donald Trump. It's a complete conflict of interest. And if you take a quick look at the Georgia Appeals Court decision here, that's what it says. There's such an appearance of impropriety, an appearance of a conflict of interest, that Fani Willis should not be the prosecutor. I think this spells yet another case that's going to have to either be suspended or more likely just ended and tossed out. It's hard for me to see another Georgia district attorney wanting to take up this flawed case and try to prosecute Trump on these theories that his reelection campaign was some kind of criminal organized crime enterprise.
John.
Yeah, and then we look at the fact that there's an organization known as Judicial Watch that reached out to Fani Willis in order to get the details of her communications with the Biden-led Department of Justice and the Biden campaign. And then she ignored it, but then she was found liable and she had to turn over her information. And then now she gets DQ'd. So I'm thinking there's something going on here. And who knows? I think in the long run, this case may just disappear and they may just try to shut it down, because the fact that Trump got elected president again threw a monkey wrench in all these operations. That's why I believe, and this is just me speculating, why ABC News decided to settle out of court George Stephanopoulos to make a deal with Trump paying $15 million because they don't want all of the details to come out of what really went on behind the scenes with the DNC, the Biden administration, and the mainstream media, ABC News in particular. You'll probably most likely see a lot of settlements when it comes to all these cases that Trump is looking to try, because a lot of these folks don't really want the cat out of the bag. A lot of these folks, all these cases that popped up across the country, all of these media outlets, it was all, in my mind, complete collusion. These people all came together and they said, we're going to do everything we can to besmirch this man's name and to make him out to be evil, make him out to be the bad guy. And they never thought in a million years that he'd be president again. So now they're all panicking. You see Georgia throwing this case, or at least disqualifying Fani Willis. And again, we'll see what happens.
A couple of things here. There are 14 others that face charges. I don't know what happens to them, but she can appeal to the state Supreme Court in Georgia. But given what the Supreme Court said in Washington about immunity, I mean, does the state Supreme Court even take her case in Georgia?
It's a good question, Bill. I think what's going to happen here, along the lines of possible appeals and so on, is it looks likely, because of that presidential immunity decision by the Supreme Court, that any kind of state prosecution of President Trump would have to be at least suspended, if not dropped. You're seeing that going on, those arguments going on right now up in New York City with the case being heard by Judge Merchan. So even if they could get past immunity, they'd still have to suspend it while President Trump was in office. But furthermore, you'd have to go back and then scrub the whole indictment, scrub everything the grand jury did, and say you've got to eliminate anything that used official actions by President Trump, any evidence that came in from White House officials, from anything the president was doing in the Oval Office. They might actually fatally handicap this prosecution and require the whole thing to be dismissed.
It's interesting, too, because she had this novel way of trying to get at him through RICO. Was that a mistake as well? In addition to her personal behavior, obviously, is what they're saying here. But in a way, it was this like novel idea, like, how can I be the one to take Trump down? That's for.
And think about it. We, as in here in Las Vegas, when I was working with Las Vegas Metro Police, we've used criminal organization, the RICO Act, to go after gangs, criminal gangs. I'm talking about like street gangs who became more advanced. RICO are some of the acts that were used to take out major drug cartels or mafia members or big or criminal organizations like that. And they actually tried to go the RICO route against Donald Trump, who questioned the election. Utterly insane. And this is why this whole thing is blown up in their face, because the entire lawfare, going after Trump on a criminal level or going after Trump on a civil level, this was all planned to take this man down. And most of them had no validity to them whatsoever. And then you look at Joe Biden with all the crap he has, all the Hunter Biden emails and the big guy and the China allegations, the shell organizations, the various email accounts he had that show he had ties with Ukraine and China, or at least give the appearance of that. But no, nothing happens as a result of that. And then you look at Hunter Biden being pardoned for 11 years, all the way up to 2014, 10, 11 years. But yeah, you go after Trump for all these bogus charges. Man, stop, y'all. Straight up, stop. Totally ridiculous.
Like, politically, she wanted that reputation.
Yeah. Dana, you and I remember we're Justice Department alums. Yeah, I remember you when you were there and I was there and we were, there after the days of 9/11. And you can use this kind of statute, RICO, to try to go after real organized crime, drug cartels, mafia organizations.
Exactly.
DA Fani Willis introduced, I think, a really dangerous theory was that we could use these powerful tools that are used for terrorists and drug cartels and apply them to political campaigns, and not just any political campaign, but the campaign by the leading opposition candidate at that time, Donald Trump, the head of one of the two major parties in the country. I think ultimately the whole thing would have been tossed out because it violated the free speech rights of Donald Trump, the free speech rights of the Republican Party, and actually a lot of Americans who supported him. So I think in the end, this whole thing was going to come crashing down around Fani Willis's and the Democratic Party's ears. Anyway.
Well, it seemed complicated from the beginning. There is that case here in New York that's still out there, the 34 counts in Judge Merchan's courtroom. He made a ruling about a week ago that the conviction still stands, but the penalty will be judged at a later date. John, do you think that later date ever happens now?
I think this is Judge Merchan really still trying to go after Donald Trump. Think about it. If you look, Bill, you mentioned the presidential immunity case. There's a footnote, a really important footnote in that opinion that says states, even if they're prosecuting a president for private acts, can't use evidence from the presidency. They can't use what Donald Trump said in the Oval Office. They can't use what White House officials said. Nevertheless, Judge Merchan went ahead and held a trial and introduced that kind of evidence. He should, at the very least, order a new trial, if not force a DA to go back to it. But what Merchan is doing, which I think is still dangerous, is he's dangling these charges still, the sentencing, over the head of Donald Trump and saying, well, I can't sentence you now. Maybe I won't. He still probably could. He could try to get in before the inauguration, but he shouldn't. But he's going to say, I'm going to dangle that over your head for the next 4 years, and I'm going to be waiting for you when your presidency is over.
That's exactly what I think is going to go down. If he can, over the next 4 years, this dude's going to he's just going to wait it out. And then after Trump's no longer president, he's going to try to get him. That's what I think.
Well, you have to think he's doing the work of Alvin Bragg, right, Dana? Right. At the moment. I mean, he works for the DA, right, John?
I don't know.
I wouldn't say he's doing, I'm sure Bragg loves this idea because Bragg is trying to make his career out of harassing President Trump. And this is a terrible thing for not just Donald Trump, for all Americans because of the presidency. You don't want presidents to have to try to make the toughest decisions on behalf of the country and have to worry, what's going to happen to me when I come out of office? Is this, two-bit judge and this DA going to be waiting for
clear
me?
decision making, indeed.
And then you think about Alvin Bragg, New York soft on crime DA, lowering the penalties for various crimes, lowering what's necessary for or increasing the standard to make a felony. And then you see crime skyrocketing, shooting up all over New York City. But he makes the time to make sure he goes after Donald Trump for charges that most DAs, even former Governor Cuomo said that when he worked the DA office, when he was the state DA, I believe, he said there's no way they would have went after anyone for these charges. But the only reason they're going after Trump, the only reason they're trying to file these charges or press these charges or convict this man is because his name is Donald Trump. But yet your city's in utter disarray, and yet at the same time you can make time for probably the lowest offenses you could possibly have or possibly be dealing with because you don't like the guy. I hope these people get investigated. And again, not any kind of retaliation game, but just to see if there's anything legit going on as far as if there's any dirt. I would almost guarantee you, in my personal opinion, that if they start to dig deep, they're going to find something. They're going to find that these people also colluded, Alvin Bragg colluded with the DNC in order to bring Trump down.
John, you stick around for a moment. We have some other breaking news, Bill.
Yeah.
But pretty nuts, y'all. But at the same time, most of us kind of saw this coming. We saw that even during the hearing, when, as far as the relationship she had with old boy, her boyfriend, the fact that they were visiting the White House on multiple occasions, and I'm drawing a blank on my man's name, on her boyfriend's name, but also the fact that he couldn't remember the conversations that were had when they visited the Biden office. This thing reeked of conspiracy, reeked of them conspiring against Donald Trump. But let me know what you think. If you appreciate content like this, make sure you subscribe and give me a like, and I'll see you on the next video.